So you're going to need to get a picture of kind of where are they at, what's going on, what's their insurance look like, what's it going to be like having a conversation with your parents?
I know they've not put it off to the degree where it's like it's out of their heads completely. So I know that they have like burial plots, they have a will. My dad has given me access to his password vault key so that if they both were unavailable, I could get into their accounts and things of that nature where like he's somewhat thinks of I am his daughter, thinks of worst case scenarios and starts planning for them. But then and he does have an attorney. So I hope that that person is also guiding him, but I just don't have insight into, I think it would be a good back and forth flow conversation. They'd be open with me. But at the same time, yeah, I'm not sure how far they've thought through each of the aspects and designating power of attorney and person that would make decisions on their health. Like, have they gone that far with it? I don't know.
Yep. You want to have that conversation. And if you're going to be the person, you got to know.
Welcome to the Child Free Wealth Podcast, hosted by Bree and Dr. J, Certified Financial Planner. Here we discuss life and finances as it relates to being child-free. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Please consult your advisor before implementing any ideas heard on this podcast.
But before we go in, like, did you try the Donuts and Dragons? I got to know kind of how'd that work out.
Yeah, no, that was such a fun turn of conversation when we were talking last about, oh, this was like a flyby idea we had, and we would joke about it and, dream about it until we were like, wait, this could actually be kind of a viable thing. So we've taken some material steps to test it out. We have not had our first session yet, but we've got 2 interested parties that we're looking to just like a kind of like a play test scenario where like they're not going to pay us anything because they're friends and family, but we'd like to get together and like the age groups are, one group would be more teenagers, the other group would be more a younger group, more like a kids party type scenario. And yeah, talking to some of the parents that we know, it was like, so the premise of this idea for a small business obviously is to do some like small time like DMing of kids party games and things like that. The one person I spoke to though, his daughter particularly isn't super sporty or into like maybe traditional extracurriculars, but would be really interested in a D&D party. And so I was like, well, this could be just like putting your kid in sports helps teach them life skills and teamwork and collaboration and gets people out of their shell. So can tabletop gaming. So he thought that was insightful and thought maybe we'd put together a party. So yeah, we did that. We bought a domain name. I've done a little bit of research on the bakery side of it, where we might bring baked goods, and come to find out like you do need to, for doing any type of during like a professional kitchen, looking at, I've got some peers that do rent use space in some cafes and restaurants in their off hours to prepare things. And so there's plenty of avenues to look into that. So we're a big researcher, or like we take our time. So we're still in research mode, but we've taken some steps to try it out in the next few months, we hope. So it's very cool.
And Matt, how you feeling about it?
I'm feeling good. I've already got some ideas kind of jotted down and some scenarios that I would like to take in like, leveling difficulties and whatnot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, we've talked a lot about just like how to kind of marry the themes of like the food with the campaign and keeping it light and easy to digest for children is, a challenge, but it actually kind of simplifies your storytelling in a way. So it's like you can make it engaging and, not too rule heavy. We saw another organization that does something similar out of South Carolina, that they do a lot of their sessions remote, however, and similar to what I just mentioned, they do like offer something that's more of like a pain long situation where you can have your child join for, once a month, or they do kids party games too. And so, just off of, some of the things that they had highlighted as important to keep in mind was just, not to get too tied up in like the heavy rules of like the game. And if the rule of cool is if somebody like does something out of the box or maybe has an idea that might not technically be possible, but it's really, really cool, on the DM's discretion, you can make it work.
I want to play test because
Sure.
I'm a very rule
Sure.
person.
That would be a stretch for you.
And it would be something I would have to let go of, which I don't foresee myself or foresee that being a problem.
Right.
But keeping it in a one-shot format, I think, is a really fun idea because I just have so many miniatures that I just look at and I go, oh, I can do something with that. And it just
Stories tell themselves. Yeah.
I get the ideas from that. And
If anything, it's been a fun little couple project we've been just talking about all the time. So it's fun.
So this being our last meeting, I had a couple things I wanted to make sure we talk about. I had some follow-up on the estate planning, some things that kind of the homework list, but what do you two want to make sure we talk about? Like, hey, I can't leave without discussing X.
Yeah, I think for me, just like without getting into like the details of like investment advice, just trying to still talk through, I guess, we talked a little bit about like net worth or, your the assets that you've been accumulating. And obviously we're trying to pay down debt. So I am very close to getting the car that we started the conversation talking about as having, I can't remember if it was like 7,000 or 8,000 on it, is now one payment away from being taken care of, which we are very pleased with. Yeah. So just keeping along that line, just wanting to continue to I look at that net value figure and it doesn't mean anything to me because it's not accessible and I don't even know under what conditions it would be. So I guess just trying to, I'm trying to drill into the point here, getting into that maybe advice on layered investments where maybe something should be considered outside of a 401k or something that is only accessible in retirement to something that we should be maybe prioritizing to take care of us in maybe our aging years when when cancer starts becoming a thing and things like that.
Okay. We can make sure to talk about that. Matt, anything on your list you want to make sure we talk about?
I mean, I'm pretty good. I'm good to go with the flow of whatever's going on.
Yeah. I think, for you, we were kind of drilling into you're figuring out your benefits on the next opportunity with but we've got a game plan for that because we want to make sure you're taking advantage of everything that they have to offer. So disability, and I'm not sure what all they have, but we're going to dig into that here too.
So the other one you mentioned a couple times that I want to circle back to is planning for parents. We had talked a little bit about that, but it came up twice and then got overwhelmed. Is that a priority or?
It is. Yeah, I think it is a priority. I think both of us are, well, you're the youngest, I'm more middle. And I think that, our parents are 60s, yours are a little older, and just trying to help them navigate and help us understand what we're going to be faced with as well, I think is definitely top of mind because even though it's a few years off before anything major needs to happen, it's just never too early to kind of talk through those scenarios. That is another one that I guess we haven't really fully gotten into yet.
All right, I'll try to get to as much as we can.
Sounds good.
All right, we had left off with the estate planning. You were working on the documents, starting to look at trust and will. Kind of where's that at now?
Yeah, so I started, I filled out kind of the quiz and I was looking at it from the perspective of well, if we don't have kids, it really makes more sense probably to go with a trust. But then I started getting into giving directives on possessions and pets and things like that. Are there certain functions that aren't available in a trust that we is there a reason to do it differently for different assets, I guess was going to be my question. Your house and material possessions in a will and then or in a trust and then other aspects of your health and things of that nature in a will.
Well, you're going to end up the health and the financial, those are going to go to power of attorney anyway. We had kind of gone through this. There wasn't hey, I want to control my money after I die, or was there a reason for that?
Not necessarily, no, just more of steps to take to make sure it's not left up to whomever is available or no one at all, I guess. So we don't have grand plans or people designated that would take the estate at this point in time, but certainly we wouldn't want to leave it untended without any direction either.
For most of my clients, doing a trust only makes sense if you want to have control after you die. So if there's a reason.
Okay.
A simple will tend to work for most people. I mean, you don't have anything that complex. Like if you're giving money, leaving money to somebody that has special needs or has some concerns about how they use the money, complex wishes, that's where trust fits in. A simple will says, hey, give people this money. That's probably what you need.
Okay.
If you have kind of like, hey, I'm not sure, I want to go deeper, you can pay a estate attorney, and most of them will tell you to do a trust. And I think part of that's because that's what they get paid for.
Got it. That makes sense. Because that's the trust is when you need to meet certain conditions to access the money, a certain age, a certain life status. Okay.
And I've had people like, hey, if A happens, then do B. And if B doesn't happen, do C. Like you get like into those weird things. That's where a trust comes in. Your will is saying, hey, we're dead. Give it to somebody. That's pretty simple.
That's fair. That does sound like what we need then. Yeah. I need to go back into the app because once I started filling out the information for the trust stuff, it kind of set me on a journey that did not let me go back and review the will stuff. And I was like, I don't know if this is what I need. So I put it aside and have yet to go back to it. But I think I just need to start over and go down the same, answer the same questions, but for the will perspective.
Yeah. You got too complex too quick.
It sounds like it. It's standard.
And I have so if you do a trust, then you have to title things in the trust. You have to transfer the trust. There's a whole bunch of things depending on how you do it. And for most people, like the amount of paperwork and the extra work tends not to have a huge value. There are certain states where it does. You're not in one of those. So like, I think you're okay. But, if all else fails, you can reach out to an estate attorney. They will probably tell you to get a trust because it's going to make it easier on the people that are inheriting it.
Okay.
But sometimes that work is not worth it. Like that's
sure. Yeah.
part of the balancing act. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So let's shift down to some of the investing things and let's talk about kind of like strategies, next steps, order of operations. So the first step is we're paying off the debt. Awesome. And we'll be there in a month or so. Is that kind of where we're at?
That's where we're at. Yes.
Okay. Next step is we're going to want to have a 6-month emergency fund set up. So I've got your expenses down as, I don't know, something like $5,000 a month-ish. Does that sound right?
Give or take, yeah, with the mortgage and debts is in there, right? Yeah.
The goal would be to have $30,000 in an emergency fund. The emergency fund we keep in a high yield savings account. It just sits there, doesn't get invested, just earn some interest, let it set it and forget it. The reason we don't invest that is because we want it to be there when we need it. The worst thing is, hey, I need this money and the market's down that week. Like people often think about emergency funds for like, hey, what if I lose my job? But it's more than that, So like, what happens if a family member needs you to fly across country that next day, or your transmission blows, or like whatever.
Yeah, we're dealing with a plumbing issue that we're hoping insurance is looks like it will take care of, but it was bad enough. It was like, oh, any progress we've recently made or hope to make in the near term with adding to our savings is going to be eliminated with this. The cost of this is basically a pipe that runs through our front yard and carries most of our water to the city system is got tree roots in it, which apparently is a thing we did not know happens to older homes. So we're looking at replacing some of that. That is a doozy of a bit.
Yeah, it's like $25,000 just to open up the ground and start messing with that stuff.
To get like the excavation equipment out, the foreman, the work. Yeah, it's largely labor because they're just putting in plastic pipes, which are standard now because roots cannot penetrate plastic, apparently. That's what they say. So yeah, we're like, well, let's see what it's going to cost. And yeah, we do have some sort of coverage on our homeowners insurance that should handle the lion's share of it. But yeah, that's what we thought, man, our emergency fund already was, we hadn't prioritized that yet, having still wanting to take care of the car. We're going to be at another pretty large setback with this one. So we'll see how it goes. But
yeah, so that's where that emergency fund, if you had it, yeah, you'll still deal with the insurance, do your thing, but it's not really a big deal then. You're like, I got the money. We can make it happen.
Right. It's not taking from my current needs and things I'm looking at doing, right?
So that's going to be your next step. So realistically, that's probably the rest of the year. Plus some.
Yeah, at least. Mm-hmm.
Then after that comes maxing out your 401ks, your retirement plans. Then after that, we can talk about something else.
Okay.
So really my answer is reach out to me about a year and a half from now. We can have another plan. But
I hear you. Okay.
people try to well, should I do this? Should I do that? It's real simple. Emergency fund first, then max out your retirement accounts. Then we'll come back and have another conversation.
Got it.
I mean, unless you can tell me what your life's going to look like in 2 years. I mean, I'm not sure I know, but
I don't think I can tell you that. Yeah. I mean, mine is nearly maxed out in terms of nearly contributing to the limit. That's been the truth since about 2020. Well, no, it's been going up every few years. I'll add more, but for you, we've kept it kind of steady and haven't increased it terribly. So that would be another. I wonder if I should even back off my contributions until I have a emergency fund. Might be prudent.
we can have that discussion. That's where we're talking about, should we have done that to pay off the debt, all that. I'm not going to lose sleep over it, but
sure. All of them are good outcomes. So, yeah.
And what happens is the stuff you put into your 401k, SEP IRA, all of that is getting tax benefits. If you need to access it earlier, you still can. So there's ways, but people always think about, well, that's for retirement. Yes. And it can be used other ways.
Yeah. Hardships and loans and things like that. Yeah.
Well, and we can, if you decide to retire tomorrow, there's ways to get money out. You have to take the same payment every year. There are ways. It's just more paperwork, but the tax benefits are worth it. So that's kind of the ups and downs.
Okay. That makes sense.
Does that make sense?
I think so.
I think the other one, though, is from an investment standpoint, is not to you're like, well, should I do other accounts? We're not there. We do one step at a time.
That's fair. Okay.
Everybody's like, well, can I do this? Can I do that? I got people, well, I get this app that does this. And I'm like, no. Okay. We save for our emergency fund. We max out our 401k, our SEP IRAs. Awesome. And then we might even be able to do a Roth IRA or traditional for you too. We could put a bunch of money in your retirement before we'll ever get to the brokerage account. The other bonus of that is the stuff that's in the retirement, people tend not to touch, which then allows it to grow.
Sure. That makes sense.
It's just kind of how that works.
The subject of brokerages came up the other day, and it was in the context of so I know we've mentioned this in past discussions, but I do have a associate stock ownership plan at my job. And I wanted to understand, in the event of separating from the company, right? That money I understand is, it's shares of the company. In some cases, and I have done some research on this for my situation, it can be dispersed in cash or go to a brokerage where it can be, either invested as the same shares from that company or different shares. And I was kind of curious about that from the perspective of my particular case, the cash option is not available. It is only if you can only put it into a brokerage account or with a brokerage company. And I'm just kind of curious about that process. I guess I'm sure it's all situational, but what are the decision points there? I guess, are there benefits to doing it one way or?
Essentially, I'm just looking at, you got, X amount of shares of your company. It's a publicly traded company. So the day you leave, you move it to whatever, Fidelity or wherever your brokerage account is. And then you can sell it the next day. Now, there'll be some tax consequences for selling it because it depends on what you paid for it. But it's yours to do with, so it's not a big deal. The cash out option, really what they're doing is they're essentially selling your stock for you and then cashing it out. I can transfer it to the brokerage and then deal with it myself.
Yeah, have more control over it that way. And I didn't know if there's some heavy tax burden on once you get it to the brokerage, if they were to pay it out, if that is a bad idea from now you're going to be taxed on that as income, or if it should just be counted as a part of your retirement and just invested in a different set of, I know those aren't yes or no answers, but more of just again, those decision points, trying to understand them.
Well, just like holding any stock, what's going to happen is if you've held it for a year and a day, it's long-term capital gains, which with where you two are at, it'll be about 15% is what the long-term capital gains rate. It won't be income because it's a stock you've held. So that's kind of the trick there. There may be some weird tax stuff depending on how it's treated on the way out.
Okay.
You can always reach out at that point. The tax laws on a lot of that stuff change like almost daily. It feels like. So like whatever answer I give you now might not.
Yeah. It's all hypothetical anyway. But yeah, I just was like, I know just some people who've recently separated, either gotten other jobs or retired. I've always just been curious, like, what do you do with that after the fact? And like, what's the most prudent path forward? Because, it's not an insignificant amount of money at this point. I think it's up to like 63,000, where it's like, okay, that could pay, going into either a more diverse investment scenario where it's actually, gaining money at a higher rate than just the ebbs and flows of the stock prices. And well, I'll do more research, but
It's not even just about gaining more money. So right now, 30% of your net worth is all in one company. So we don't want to do that. In general, we want to have, a little bit of everything rather than all in one company. Now, there's limitations while you work there, so we just leave it there. The day after you leave, okay, maybe we need to make some moves.
Gotcha. That's fair.
Nothing to worry about right now. It's essentially free money to you right now. So
I didn't forget it.
Yeah. When you leave, then we can figure out the answer. But the answer will most likely to be to sell it and then diversify. It's just a matter of a balancing act.
Yep. That makes a lot of sense.
All right. So let's talk about your parents and kind of like, how are they doing overall? Let's start with how old are they? Let's go there.
Yeah, so my parents are 64. Both of them are 64. Yours, I believe, are 72 and
74 and 71, 72.
Okay. Yeah. And they're in their early 70s. Yeah. And it has been top of mind too. Matt's father is having some procedures done on his heart. So things that we're just trying to wrestle with the risks of, and all routine stuff. We expect great outcomes, but it's more of the they're getting older. It's showing up, that's kind of the thought of like, we need to not wait a different day to think about this and talk about this, and at least in our own world have an understanding of what our decision points are and what we can help them with.
Yeah. So first thing is I'm going to send you an article, which will be a bunch of questions to ask your parents. So part of this is having the conversation of like, how are you doing? Like, the only parents we take on for our company as a whole is the only parents we take on is actually the parents of our child free folks. And we'll do this drop in and take a look at we do a checkup on them and see what's going on. And I tend to find as a whole, they're either doing worse than we thought or like have a whole lot more money than we thought. They're either like broke or rich.
No in between.
There's not much. And I think that's a reflection of income disparities and a few other things. But like, so we're talking about baby bloomers as this generation. Mm-hmm. And it's very rare that I'll find somebody kind of like, they're okay. They're not broke and they're not rich. What's your gut? You think your parents are more on the rich side or more on the broke side? And that's not technical terms, but you get the concepts.
No, I do. Giving those two polarized ideas, I would say on the poorer side, but not broke by any means. I don't know. What are your thoughts? His father was like a tradesman, a tile setter for years, where he was a foreman, and he's got things through his retirement and his pension that I have no insight into as far as the kind of money he actually has. He's thrifty, so I don't want that to inform that he doesn't have more money. So I'm very in the dark on your side. On my side, my dad was an engineer for years, high-paying job, owns property. Like, he's not broke by any means either, but he's not flush with cash either. So it feels like it's in the middle, but there probably are just things that I just don't know, to tell you the truth. So,
Matt, what's your thought?
I would say my parents are probably better off, just by their lifestyle.
Yeah,
alone.
their spending habits are thrifty, and they.
Well, Dad shots a giant eagle every day.
Well, well, he's retired now. He has to do something, but no
vacations every year.
Yeah, but what I mean is they're not lavishly living, and like their home is modest. They've made some modest improvements in their retirement. They've redone the deck, redone the kitchen, but that house has been in a steady state for their whole adult life.
Exactly.
So
the money to be doing all this this stuff, I guess.
I think they do. I think they're fine. But yeah, it's when you get into, now we're into maybe some health issues and things like that, money can go away very quickly. So,
Well, yes and no. So your parents, Rebecca, will again, they're pretty close, and Matt's are on the Medicare routine. But Matt's father may actually have a union insurance. Do you know
I
if
think
that's
he
the
does.
case?
Yeah.
He does.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that plus Medicare, he's probably pretty good on the healthcare side, believe it or not.
That's good to hear. Yeah.
It's things that they don't even exist for us.
Yeah, I have no idea what that is. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of the union pensions are gorgeous, like in comparison to what we got. That's reality check. Once you're on Medicare won't pay for long-term care, but the health care, unless you need something like specialized, like, you're going out of pocket for it, it tends to be pretty reasonable. You may not believe it, but Medicare is probably better coverage than what you two have right now. So the first step I want both of you to do is to go to your parents and say, blame me, and say, hey, we just finished our wills and power of attorneys. Where are yours? Have you had that conversation at all with them?
I have not with your parents. My parents, I do know, have taken steps to create a will. I don't know, and they have an attorney, and I don't know how long ago it was or what the status of it is, but I think that they've taken steps to understand what they need to do with it. But yeah, no other details other than that. So it would be a little bit of an exploratory conversation.
So Matt, I hear you on your parents don't want to have deep conversations, and I don't care. I hate to say it that way, but like, you're mid-70s, you got to be adults.
Let's go.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
No, 100%. Like I was saying, just typically when I go visit them, it's always for a party. And
well, sure, like a family event.
I want to try to set up something where it's just Rebecca and I and my parents and actually have these conversations.
Yeah.
And I'm going to stick with Matt for a second. I'll come back to you in a second, Rebecca. So, your dad's a great example. Okay, he's having some medical things. I want to know what his power of attorney says. I want to know if I'm named in it. Like,
yeah, that's true. That's actually a good way to breach the subject again.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, like it's typical heart surgery, but it's heart surgery still.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not something that's just
pacemaker, valve replacement, stuff that's, it's not.
I don't care if he was going in for a nose job. Like, I still want to know who's his power of attorney. Like, and you need a copy of the paperwork. Because the last thing you want is dad's in the hospital, you get a phone call, and they're like, your dad needs, a decision made. And you're like, about what? Like, what are his wishes? What am I supposed to do that? Is somebody else? That's where it becomes an issue. Chances are your mom will be the first line, but who's the second?
Right. So you have some questions that we can look at to suss out the stuff. Okay. Awesome.
I'm starting the conversation here. So I'm trying to make you a little forearm, I have a feeling where it's going to go. So we start with, kind of what's your paperwork? Now the key here is, Dad, Mom, I don't care about the inheritance. That's not the point. All right. Because a lot of times they're like, well, it's none of your business. Well, actually, it is, because I'm the one who have to make the decisions for you.
Oh, yeah. And 9 times out of 10, families would do well to get it out in the open before there's opportunity for bad blood to start. And I fear not that our familial relationships are fraught, but that the obfuscation of just this aspect of just put it out there so we all understand what's going to happen here, so we don't have to be terrible to each other, because no one wants that, and nobody would encourage that, of course. But I see situations where seemingly very together families are at each other's throats because of confusion or disappointment or some kind of disillusionment with the whole process. That's just this could have been prevented, I feel, in some aspect, and maybe it can't be because it's hard stuff, but yeah.
Well, and the joke is, the only reason not to have a will is if you hate your family, because then they can all fight over your money for the rest of your life. That's kind of
yeah, exactly.
You're going to ask for a copy of the will, power of attorney, which give you an idea. Don't be surprised if they don't have one, or it hasn't been updated since you were born. I see those both frequently. Every once in a while, they'll be like, oh, well, I don't want to have a will because if I have a will, I'm going to die. And I'm like, I'll tell you what, you're going to die no matter what. I'm just saying,
That's not a factor. Yeah.
Nobody makes it alive.
It's crazy.
So you want to find that. Then you're going to want to have the conversation about, well, do you have an in case I die file, which is like a list of all your accounts, where things are, what are your wishes, things like that. Everything from do you want to be cremated to, where are your bank accounts? What I always worried about is the parents have like a safe deposit box. The will's in the safe deposit box. You can't get access to it because you don't have the will, and you don't even know where the box is.
It's a bit of a catch-22 there, yeah.
You're laughing, but one of your parents is going to have a safe deposit box with like
important things.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I was talking to somebody the other day, and they're like, "Yes, my parents have safe deposit boxes. I have a pile of keys. I know where they are." And I'm like, "Do you know which box go? Like, do you know which state they're in?" Like, last thing I was, they moved 40 years ago, but they still have a safe deposit box 3 states away. And you're like, at what bank? Because the key doesn't even say which bank.
Right. You got no info. Yeah, that would be a nightmare. Wow.
Well, what was that, Matt?
So it's actually buried in the ground.
He's joking.
Hold on. I had somebody, so my neighbor, his dad, older gentleman, his dad was depressionary baby. Their emergency fund was a coffee can of gold coins. And everybody knew there was gold coins. Dad never told them where it was.
Oh, no.
They never found it. Best we can guess, about $250,000 worth of coins. Probably buried by a tree somewhere, but...
Yep, it died with him. Oh, that's too bad.
They ripped up the place. They looked.
This is going to get really
well,
lucky
with
someday.
metal detector, maybe. We'll get lucky, but wow.
The tree's going to get hit by lightning, fall over. The coin's going to pop out. And they're like, what are these? But these are the things that people don't have the conversations. And then, if your parents have dementia or something,
it's a whole nother ball of wax, yeah.
Yep. So I also want you to ask them for copies of their insurance policies. So I'll give you an example of this. I had somebody, one of my colleagues, this woman was in the hospital for 90 days, went to go into long-term care at 91 days, and her policy was not paid for long-term care while she was in the hospital. The whole policy, gone. You want to know, do your parents have these stuff? And you want to get listed as somebody that can pay it if they don't. Because let's be real, a lot of the old time policies are like $3,000 a year or something like that. You paying $3,000 a year out of your pocket to keep them for long-term care coverage will save them hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Easily, yep.
Yeah, I found a lot of parents had these old long-term care policies. I saw one the other day. It was like $500 a day coverage for life. No matter how long they exist, I'm like, you're going to pay that policy before you pay your light bill because that is worth every penny, no matter what money you have. And I had somebody else who had one of those good policies. She checked with her dad, he had it. And he's like, yeah, I stopped that last year because it cost me too much money. And I'm like, oh no. So
you can never get that back. They don't offer that, I'm sure, anymore.
They don't exist.
Shoot.
And getting insurance when you're 74 is not going to happen.
Nightmare. Yeah.
So you're going to need to get a picture of kind of where are they at, what's going on, what's their insurance look like, what's the life. I mean, Rebekah, do you have any? What's it going to be like having a conversation with your parents?
So I know they've had at least. They've not put it off to the degree where it's like it's out of their heads completely. So I know that they have burial plots. They have a will. My dad has given me access to his password vault key so that if they both were unavailable, I could get into their accounts and things of that nature where he's somewhat thinks of, I am his daughter, thinks of worst case scenarios and starts planning for them. But then and he does have an attorney. So I hope that person is also guiding him, but I just don't have insight into, I think it would be a good back and forth flow conversation. They'd be open with me. But at the same time, yeah, I'm not sure how far they've thought through each of the aspects and designating power of attorney and the person that would make decisions on their health. Have they gone that far with it? I don't know.
Yep, you want to have that conversation, and if you're going to be the person, you got to know. I want you ultimately to get a copy of the paperwork. If you're going to be named in it, get a copy of paperwork, put it on your phone. That way, if you're traveling and you're I don't know, the paper copy is always better, but it's better to have, I'd rather have like a copy that I can like email the hospital and be like, yep, I've got this. I'm good. The other thing is, and this is more for Matt's parents, but we'll go also for Rebekah, as they get in their kind of 70s, at least in particular, I want you to be listed on their bank accounts as a trusted person. Now, this doesn't mean you have control over their accounts. So you're not like getting added like it's Matt's bank account, but a trusted person is like, who do they call when something weird starts happening? So I'll give you a silly example of this. So one of my colleagues had this woman, she was on her own. It was either late 70s, early 80s, started going to the bank regularly, taking 10 grand out just after she got herself a nice young boyfriend. And just Matt, so the daughter gets a phone call. Hey, your mom's been taking 10 grand out pretty regularly. That's new behavior. Is this okay? And the trusted person gets contacted like that, but they can't really stop it. So she had the discussion with her mom, and her mom's like, listen, it's my money, and if I want to spend it on him, I'm going to spend it. That's fine. Like, I mean, that's as long as she's good sound mind, she can do that. But at least to get that phone call about like, hey, something weird is happening.
Oh yeah, definitely. The elder scams out there are really awful. It's really dark. Yep.
Yep. So you want to be listed as a trusted person on all of their accounts. It doesn't mean you can actually do much with their accounts. Like you're just like somebody they contact if something weird happens. And each bank or place has their own rules on what that means. But like, you want to be in the loop when weird stuff happens. Does that make sense? Any history in your families of dementia, Alzheimer's, cognitive decline?
Not recent history. Who are you thinking of?
My mother's side has a.
Oh, do they?
Yeah.
Okay. Possibly on his mother's side. I wasn't aware.
Alzheimer's and dementia.
Okay.
So Matt, on your mom's side, that's where we're going to want to have some good discussions about what's long-term care look like for your mom, because that's the expensive stuff. Dementia, Alzheimer's, the cognitive decline where it's for a long period of time. It's going to be one of those discussions. You're going to have an understanding of like, what does your parents' financial situation look like? Because the truth is, you two are not going to be able to help them on it. So it costs $115,000 a year. Mom's now in dementia care for 7 years. You just can't.
Yeah, there wouldn't be enough. Yep.
That is not going to be the level of conversation they want to have at a party, Matt. I'm just saying.
No, you're right on. We need a different setting for that conversation.
And if they don't have a plan, that's fine. We just need to know it, and then we need to plan their finances to go with it. And what'll happen is kind of interesting. So, Rebekah, your parents are still young enough; they might be able to get some type of insurance or coverage. Matt, probably not so much. So we may end up with like two different financial solutions for the two of them. And what'll happen? I was just working with somebody on this. Like, they might have a financial planner who's just doing their investments. Well, that person won't ask them any questions about long-term care, Or I had somebody, they work with so-and-so. Well, it turns out that so-and-so is just an insurance salesperson. So they've got a whole bunch of life insurance, got no long-term care insurance. So you need to start finding out, what are they getting for information? How does that work? I've actually had some of my clients pay for their parents to get financial planning, which sounds like it's kind of crazy, but it's not. It's kind of like if I spent, whatever, it was $500, $1,000, get somebody to go spend a couple hours with them, then you guys will have a good idea of like, oh, they're better than we thought or worse than we thought. Because I'm just telling you, it's going to be one or the other. And then you can rest a little bit more comfortably.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, especially from the standpoint like this might be not the right perception to have, but I feel like a lot of parents don't take guidance from their children that well. So even in well-meaning conversations of, hey, you might want to think about, that there's something about it. There's a little asterisk over our heads that says, yeah, I don't trust this one. And so they need to maybe hear it from a third party. That's how it goes. It's like, at least you've heard it from somebody, not your child, that you need to be thinking about something a little bit different.
Yep. The general rule in finance is you cannot teach somebody who you've seen naked or they've seen you naked. So your parents, you cannot teach, they cannot you can't teach your spouse, you can't teach your parents. You can't. They never look at you the same. So and that's where you might be able to be part of the conversation but me or somebody like me can say, hey, mom, dad, understand, appreciate that. Awesome. You need to fix X. So like Rebekah, you were talking about your parents might have some land or some investments. All that. Cool. Well, how do we pass that on, and what structure, where does that fit becomes here. So like, this is where I go into sometimes they have more money than you think, so people have a lot of land, whether it's like farmland, investments, all that. It's very easy to have a whole bunch of money sitting around that then they have to have a plan for. And if they don't have a plan for it, depending on how much they have, they could pay up to 40% in estate taxes, which gets expensive real quick. Now you're thinking, huh?
Yeah.
Did I get you worried?
No, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of factors to it. You're right. There's like, things that are lurking that you just don't think about. That's one of them there. Yeah.
I'm telling you, I have a feeling from what you guys have told me that they're going to actually have more than you think they do, unless they like made a big mistake somewhere. And then you're like, Dad, you're buying the what was it, Giant Right or what? The cheapest crap you can get, Giant Eagle, and you're fine. You can afford the real meal. Like getting your parents to spend money, that's a different thing. But like I've seen some scrimping savers. I got people that got $10 million and still cutting coupons, and I'm like, okay, I understand you saved $3 by cutting that coupon, but you're fine.
Who are you doing this for? Right. Oh, it's funny.
You're laughing, but I have a feeling between one of your parents, we're going to find that. Like,
yeah, that's probably closer to the truth. That's funny. Oh yeah, your mom.
And so Matt, another great example for your parents. So your dad's pension, you need to understand if mom gets any of that or not if after he dies. There's a whole bunch of like, depending on how he picked it, which plan and all that. If mom's counting on that, but it's going to disappear.
All the finances in the house. She's probably got herself set up.
She may, but she may also not understand it. Like sometimes
there's the legalese on those things are hard to, you've got to have somebody explain it to you like you're 5 before you actually get the whole story, which is fine. Like I'd rather hear it that way than be confused and not understand reality. So,
well, and everything we've done with your plans and look at taxes and investing, all that, all needs to be done for your parents. And unfortunately, way too often I find out like, oh, well, we've been going to John for the past 40 years. John runs the local Edward Jones office, being charged a bunch of fees. I had somebody the other day, 2.5% in fees of what they're getting charged. I'm like, John's not taking care of you. Now, by the way, John's not a real person. I'm just using the random John. But like, you're going to find that because, they went to church with John. They've known him forever. He's been like, it's just.
Yeah, it's the way it goes. Word of mouth and buddy system and
family.
Yeah, friend of the
Next
family.
thing you know, they find out they're being, sold things they don't need, like it's, and your parents may be doing things so they feel like they're the right things. And you're like, awesome.
Sure.
And they probably were the right things 40 years ago. Now, maybe not.
Things change. Yeah, things change quickly. Absolutely.
The other one I'm going to have, and it's in the checklist, is kind of like, you're going to ask them about like, well, what else you got? Which is what other like random checks are coming in? What other paperwork do you have? Whatever. The gold or silver coins, a very common one. They have like a collection somewhere. Paper stock certificates. So they used to go door to door and sell stock. I've got some of those. I've got some folks that have that. I got people like, I don't have any paper stock certificates, but your grandfather did, and they're in the safe deposit box. Well, you inherited grandpa's stuff. You have paper stock certificates. What is it? These are the type of things where you start having a conversation. You're like, Mom, why didn't you tell me about this? It's like, well, I never thought about it. The other one I want you to, while you're having the conversation with them, is there any family items you want to make sure you get? And sometimes the answer is to get that now. And it may be things you don't want also. Like you may have to say, Mom, I don't need the china set and the hutch.
Please don't. Yeah.
I inherited 3 sets of china. I'm like, what do you want me to do with this? I can't. They're not microwave safe. I can't.
You barely need one.
You display it for people to look at.
Oh, that's a bygone era. I don't want china on my wall.
Let's just say Goodwill got some china.
Yeah.
It's like, thanks, Graham. But sometimes like family heirlooms, my family's still fighting over a $10 desk my grandfather built. Like it's not always like expensive, but like,
Yeah, sentimental.
hey, I would love, my grandmother passed. She always crocheted Afghans. So everybody got an Afghan, like it's not always the money stuff. It's those other things you want to have the conversation about. And if you don't, it might get overlooked, might get given to somebody else in the will, like it becomes a big issue.
Yep. Yeah. Tell them now if you have a special request, and they will abide or they won't.
So I gave you a bunch. We'll send you a set of questions. My guess is, and you can feel free to email after, like you'll open a can of worms. The hardest part is the first conversation. So you say, hey, my planner, Dr. J, says I got to talk to you about this. Blame me. And then once you start the conversation, they'll be okay with it. It's just like, they'll be like, Matt, why are you asking me these questions? Like I got a will. Okay, that's all you got to know.
Uncomfortable, like you don't. And that was also an era where, and I guess it's still the case, where you just don't talk about money. Like this is uncouth. It's like, well, this is necessary. Like this isn't for fun. I'll tell you that.
And it's not because you're like, hey, what am I getting in the inheritance?
Right.
Now, occasionally, I will have people like, hey, I'm getting 10 million. I'm like, okay, well, let's just change your financial plan. Okay, Rebekah, you're making faces, but one of you might get lucky.
Yeah, I don't think they got that much.
They talk a lot about the baby boomers and this transfer of wealth when they die and all that. I don't really believe all that because I think it's all going to long-term care, but that's just essentially my guideline is whatever you think you're getting from your parents. If it's less than 500,000, you're getting zero. If it's above $1 million, cut it all in half because you figure half will go to their care. Okay, cool. So you find out they have $2 million net worth and you're getting $1 million. That actually does impact your finances considerably. We don't know when, we don't know how, we don't know where, but that's where it does matter. Getting an idea of what is, I'm amazed on people like, I don't have a lot of money. Okay, cool. Like, well, but I have a paid off house. Okay. And I got this land here. I don't know why everybody seems to have land in Florida. I have land in Florida. I got these stock certificates. And next thing you know, we added up to like 2 or 3 million. And I'm like, you got money. And they're like, well, all I get is Social Security. I'm just living off of that. Like, and I'm like, you're a millionaire and you're living like,
Yeah. Got the assets.
You will find that. I have a lot of folks that have a house in California, and California property values have gone up through the roof. And what happened is the property tax rates were set when they bought the house, and they haven't gone up since. So they have no clue what their property is really worth. And all of a sudden, a house that they bought for $100,000 is worth like $3 million 40 years from now. And they're like, there's no way it's worth that. And I'm like, okay, like your neighbor next door. And it becomes big tax issues and all that. So you just need to understand it.
Oh, yeah, for sure. That makes a lot of sense.
All right. So how are you two feeling?
I feel good. I feel like these are conversations that are timely and like not for the birthday party this weekend, but maybe the next time we see them, then we can have dinner at their place or they can come here and we can just break the ice and see what's up. I feel empowered to do that.
Same.
That's good. Rebekah, go to the bigger picture, your overall financial plan, any big what ifs worrying you right this second? Like, are we like, you seem to come down a little more comfortable over the past 6 months, but like.
I have. I've definitely gotten some good reality checks, and just from the perspective of like, you don't have to boil the ocean. You can take it one step at a time. And I like the, baby steps to the goal of, getting that, getting all of your goals met, but at the pace at which life allows and and what makes sense at the time. And I think that's helped me relax about a lot of things, that like, you don't have to have it all figured out. Just if you're even talking about it, thinking about it, you're doing more than most people do. And I think that's been huge for a shift in mindset for me.
Yep. Matt, how about you? How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. Getting a little more responsibilities with our finances and our planning and stuff like that.
Budgets,
Budgets, and it's made me kind of stand a little bit of that stuff a little more, especially. I know we very much still started like just being really hard on ourselves when we make any purchase.
Oh, the guilt.
The
Yeah.
guilt. I think we've let ourselves be a little less guilty. Not by much, but we're
Yeah, for sure. It's been a shift for us for sure, where we just being more relaxed about everything. And I think my shift has probably set the tone for that largely, because I'm sure a lot of it was coming from me. But you were always you've been, I mean, you're thrifty like your parents were too. You're not a big spender either, but it's also like when we do indulge, it's like not to beat ourselves up about it so much. So it's made life more enjoyable for sure.
Yeah. And at least from the outside, I can see you feel a little more comfortable about everything, whatever that means. Yeah. Matt, you're going to have to be the check for Rebekah if she gets spin herself up on some of this stuff. No,
that's your job. You're hired. You are hired. I need that.
Matt doing the budget and getting more into it, like it has worked, taking stress off. Like, Rebekah, your questions about some of the investing, was you getting back to some of your nature, like, I got to get 17 steps ahead? I'm like, no.
Sure. Yep. Yeah, usually I get there when something pops into my head, which again, the ASOP account, the stock ownership account, I was like, oh, I don't know anything about what to do with that. It's like, well, you don't need to today or tomorrow. So, you just understand the basics and you'll cross that bridge when you come to it. Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah. Well, what happens is your plan for the next couple of years is pretty much set for you. All right, we're going to do the emergency fund. We're going to max out our retirement accounts. We're going to do some shifts around the job. Maybe this Donuts and Dragon things takes off. Awesome. Okay, well then 5 years from now, hey, I've switched jobs. I got to do this. Okay, cool. Then we need to have another conversation.
Sure.
Right now you're just doing the right things and you just set it and forget it.
Yeah, plugging away. Yep. That's excellent.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please consider leaving a rating or review. We'd love to keep the conversation going. Follow Child Free Wealth on social media or email us at podcast@childfreewealth.com. If you're interested in working together, learn more by visiting our website, www.childfreewealth.com. We'll see you next time.